Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great honor that I introduce to you the You Made Us What We Are Warner Records recording artist, Kedren Bryant.
I'm a young black man doing all that I can to stay. Oh, when I look around and I see what's being done to my kind every day, I'm being hurt to this prey. My people don't want no trouble. We've had enough struggle. I just want to live. God protect me. I just want to live.
Thank you, Kedren. Before we even start a thing, I just want to ask you, how has this song going viral changed your life?
From my song, I Just Want to Live, going viral, it has definitely been a big change in my life. I've got to travel to LA to record music in the studio, and it's just been a blessing, and I've been having a good time. This whole music journey has just been just a great journey. I'm so grateful.
That's awesome. I'm so honored and blessed to represent you, but even more so to get to know you, your mother, your family through this journey. It's just been amazing. Will you share with our participants, what is your favorite kind of music to sing, honey?
It's not like a specific like genre, I'll say, but I think I just really like music that just uplifts people and that just motivates people, that changes their way of thinking, or just encourages them just to keep on fighting, and just pressing. So basically like motivational music. I love that genre.
I love it. And so do you think you'll do any more songs that deal with social justice issues?
Yes, ma'am. I do believe that I would do more songs around social justice, because I never want to leave. I just want to live side, and I never just want to throw that away. I want to keep on fighting for what is right, and until justice is for Black people, I will still keep protesting, and just through music, and just keep on just shining a light on this world.
You make me so proud, Kedren.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you who may not be familiar with Kedren Bryant, he is a 13-year-old from Jacksonville, Florida. He is signed to Warner Records. He stood up by singing straight from the heart about the systematic injustices faced by the Black community, and the entire world took notice. His song, I Just Want to Live, was actually penned by his mother, Miss Janetta Bryant, who's also joining us tonight. And he quietly and humbly gave a sound and a face to the Black Lives Matter movement. As a matter of fact, the Associated Press dubbed I Just Want to Live the most important song of the year in 2020. It's also been dubbed the anthem of the Black Lives Matter movement. So with over 4 million views on Instagram in less than a month, Kedren became a regular part of our household and has touched the lives of so many, and then went on quite the press junket, from Ellen DeGeneres to Good Morning America, CNN, The Today Show, Billboard. He's been featured by the Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation. He's been on Time Magazine, Harper's Bazaar, Nickelodeon. I mean, you name it, even BBC. So Kedren has been worldwide with this song and with more to come. So Kedren, I know you have practice, sir. Yeah. So I know that you're going to be leaving us, but am so, so honored to have had you join us tonight. And thank you and God bless you. And we can't wait to hear what's next.
Thank you for having me.
Mhm. So, to all my participants tonight, thank you so much for joining us. This is the Soul Reciprocity Network's third episode, and this is a special edition in honor of Black History Month. Um, Art helps us to have hard conversations, issues of race, religion, equal rights, gender inequality. We speak of struggle and triumph through artistic expression of every kind. Doing so allows us to speak truth in multiple ways and from multiple perspectives that are often more palatable than conversation will always allow. So, with movements, music, movies, and more, we sought to have a special edition that deals with social justice and the arts. And of course, this is the Focus on Faith web series. And so we're even going to talk about how social justice issues are intertwined or not with the issues of faith-based creators. So tonight, I am so excited to introduce you all to an amazing panel of guests that are joining us from a very diverse diaspora of the arts and entertainment industry. A few housekeeping matters, just so that you all know before we begin. There is a chat, probably that way, on your screen. We encourage all of you to join the chat. If you have questions for myself or any of the panelists, feel free to drop them in. Our producers will be taking note and keeping track, and we will be having a Q&A at the end. I also wanted to give a special thank you to our charitable partners, the James Brown Family Foundation and the Gospel Music Association, both of which are dedicated to the empowerment, betterment, and furtherment of content creators, artists, musicians, and people in the industry. We have enabled you the ability to donate to us for us to be able to give back to them. So if when you registered, of course, it's no obligation, but if you saw that donation button and if you were too much in a hurry to register and you missed it, go on back and why don't you help support our charitable sponsors as we want to kind of stay true to our name as the Soul Reciprocity Network and make sure that we give back. They do a lot in the community, including even some COVID relief funds and things that help those of us in the industry. So we really, really support them, and we are honored that they have partnered with us for this web series. Okay, let's get into it. I can't. Like, this is a very special episode for me. And the people who are here with us are also quite special to me. I'm going to figure out which direction I want to even go. I'm going to start it's always backwards on the computer, to my left with Nicole Bowers-Wallace. Nicole Bowers-Wallace is the founder and president of NBW Films. After working as a CEO and vice president of strategic development for a publicity traded international company, she pursued her lifelong passion of producing content in entertainment business. She started as a producer and a host of a medical show on Fox and led to writer, director, and producer opportunities in the independent film market. She's had films in numerous film festivals. She's become quite established to be a revolutionary production company for this generation. Her content includes traditional content with feature film with Steve Harvey, global media, I want to say it all, and numerous podcasts that are in development one that showcases the legendary Bernie Mac, various documentaries, civil rights feature film, and 2 animated series, to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to welcome Nicole Bowers-Wallace.
Hello, happy to be here. Thank you.
Directly below Nicole is a good friend of mine, Melva Benoit. And Melva is multifaceted, but she's always loved art in many forms. She's been collecting art for over 20 years. As a partner in the Band of Vices art business, Melva is a part of a collective of founders who are putting a microscope on some of our most important and significant artists in the Black community. When she is not immersed in art, she's a founder and president of the Marion Dupree Corporation, a hybrid management consulting firm that provides strategic advice to clients and helps them grow their businesses. She advises senior management of startups and Fortune 500 companies, and she currently is executive professor of the digital media and innovation at Pepperdine University. She resides in Los Angeles and has a beautiful family and a Dalmatian. Thank you, Melva, for being here. And on the road again with James Tiago Bertrand.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Hi, James. We call him Tiago. Tiago is an American producer and cinematographer from Pine Hills, it's Orlando, Florida. He's actually in the car on the way to Florida.
Yep.
We're still so glad you could join us nonetheless. He has experience working on political, commercial, network, and motion picture projects involving presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, Stacey Abrams, ABC, BET, Netflix, WeTV, and TV One. He's also been nominated and awarded accolades as a director of photography for projects such as De Machina, the Rudy Bridge story, and an adaptation of Brave Walks to School despite racial inequality, and director of photography of social media content on award-winning projects such as Beyonce's Homecoming. Since 2016, he's been cultivating virtual reality experiences using XR applications for business, education, and his goal in life is to deliver messages through different mediums at the highest levels. Most recently, Tiago had some of his 360 filmed footage featured in an episode on the Facebook Oculus platform, where they featured his work in their series called In Protest. So Tiago, thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me.
Breon Wells, how are you, sir?
Doing good. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Breon is a policy advisor and social impact strategist, a thought leader, a public speaker, an author, a songwriter. He's president and founder of the Daniel Initiative, a government relations and strategic communications firm that specifically services traditionally unrepresented and underserved populations in public policy spaces. He is also founder of a podcast. As I mentioned, he's an author. He's written songs in the gospel music industry and is even a producer of film. So Breon brings with him a myriad of experience, both on the entertainment side and the public policy, social justice, and advocacy side. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you, Breon.
Thank you again for having me.
Absolutely. Ted Wynn. Hi, honey.
Hi.
So much to say about everyone on this panel. So much to say about Ted Wynn. He's an anomaly in the gospel music industry. Two-time Stellar Award-winning winner isn't even the beginning of it. He isn't content just to sing about his faith, though. I'm quoting him, do you just go on stage and sing 5 worship songs and then go home? Is that all you do? He rhetorically asks in discussing what singers owe their fans. In recent years, he's evolved into a vocal critic of what he sees as the issues in Black music, as well as gospel music. He's a political and social apathy advocate, and he's had general disease through systemic racism. It's too many words. I can't say them all at once. Are a huge part of his platform. Although there are references to issues on his sophomore album, Stand in Awe, he is really working on some things that I can't wait for him to hopefully talk about tonight that he wouldn't let me preview. I just want to say that for the record because I'm really annoyed. However, he has been working in the industry in so many ways, not only through his message in song and through his writing, but also advocating in the arts. He's a music publisher and advocating for social justice and equality throughout the country. And I'm proud of you, Ted, and I'm proud to call you friend, and thank you for joining us. You're muted.
I know I didn't want to thank you very much.
And last but not least at all, where we began, we come full circle. Janetta Bryant, my sister, my client, my friend, Kedren's mama.
Yes.
Janetta is an incredible force to be reckoned with. Not only is she the mother of Kedren, she is the writer of I Just Want to Live. She is a auditor in the Navy, a pastor, a wife, a mom. She does it all. I say she's a publicist, a momager, and more. She was an athletic track and field star and a cheerleader back in the day, so she was always multitasking. She started her first job at the age of 15, has been working in the workforce ever since to maintain her love for all things fashion. The I Just Want to Live line, by the way, has also been created by Janetta, and she's started an online store in support of the song, social justice issues, and her son. So you have to check it out because I love it. In October 2016, she was licensed to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ by Pastor James Miller Sr. of the First Baptist Church of Warrington in Pensacola, Florida. And in 2020, when she wrote, I Just Want to Live, it woke the nation. This was a turning point in her life to see how God is still birthing gifts and vision. And I can't wait for you to share with us even more that's going on with you, Queen Janetta. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, now let's get into it. Thank you all so much. We've got a large panel here tonight, guys, and I could talk, as you already know, forever. However, I'm not going to. I want to get them talking, and I want to get them sharing some of their wisdom. We're going to kind of start into, what is it all about? What's the commotion about these days? There have been so many movements in our history as a nation, social justice issues, past and present, that are reflected in our art, from slavery, segregation, lynching, violence against persons of certain races, religions, sexual orientation issues, and civil rights issues and equal rights issues of all kinds. The whole world right now seems a little bit upside down, quite frankly. What are the key issues that you are personally impacted by is sort of where I want to start the discussion. Breon, in particular, your career in activism and public policy puts you in the center of representing the unrepresented. What do you see as the most prevalent issue amongst them all in America today, and especially for African Americans?
Yeah, and thank you for that question, Heather. I think that given the reality of systemic and institutionalized racism, which means it's not just one issue, it's a myriad of issues together, I think the most important issue that we need to face is equity. Equity is what we need, right? So we're talking about criminal the criminal legal system is not the only space where there's racism. It's not like racism was just, embedded as a part of the climate that came upon us and we caught a cold called racism when it comes to even, voting rights. But even when we look at the arts, there's a deep history of Black music being stolen. We call them covers today, but it had a whole different connotation back in the day. When we talk about the tech industry, do we have people who are in the green light or the C-suite of those, able to determine for themselves what needs to take place? And so, because intersectionality, and that means that we're hit in so many different ways, that it's not just voting and it's not just access to the ballot box, but it's access to healthcare in the ways that we need it. And it's access to job opportunities. And, it's these access even within the faith-based community. We worship differently, not just because Black people were like, well, I clap on 2 and 4. I don't know about these other people clapping on 1 and 3, right? It came down to an intentional decision. And we used policy as that weapon. We weaponized policy to say, you can't read, you can't write. These are these things that we will bar you from. So equity has to be at the top. And I would say not just for the African-American community, but for the Black community. Because the reality of the murder of George Floyd is as such that people recognize what has been the reality since 2013, which is Black Lives Matter wasn't just here in the United States. Black Lives Matter has been in Britain. Black Lives Matter has been across the European continent. They are absolutely in many spaces across the globe. So equity is that issue that I think is the part that buttresses all of the different desires and aspirations that we're seeking when we say we just want to live.
I love that. And I think, equity being absolutely key and also applicable across a lot of boards, if you will. Tiago, are there particular issues that you face in the tech space and side of entertainment that you see as being prevalent right now? Uh-oh, you're on mute.
Yes. Prevalent. Oh, hello? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello?
you're there.
Okay. Yes. I see a lot of issues in the tech space. I don't know. I'll just name 2 off the bat. In the virtual world, you have racism where artificial intelligence is these companies using artificial intelligence to regulate certain things, but they won't regulate, the N-word or, reprimand people for using such language, around us in the space. You also have, the list where they come out with people in XR and, there's only like one person of people of color or, indigenous people of color on the list. And there's a whole bunch of us that are out here, really pushing the agenda. So it's here and, it's up to people like me, a lot of us to really just, let it be known that we deserve a space in this, medium, and we should also be treated fairly and just. And we shouldn't have to, get killed, choked out, as for me, go out in harm's way to really get people to understand that, this can be used, for the right, as long as you don't use it for wrong. And, that's my goal. That's my job. I'm at the forefront and I'm going to keep pushing it and keep doing what I got to do.
Right. Nicole, what social justice issues are you called to speak on in your art creation? I think as a producer and a filmmaker, it gives you a very specific perspective. And what I love about you is that as diverse of a spectrum that you have in what you have done to date, I still see that in the work that we've been working on developing and such, that there are some social justice topics that you definitely focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't know if there's so much something that I'm necessarily start off passionate about, but it's something where I hear a story and it inspires within me that I need to tell it. And I need to be a voice for the voiceless. And so some of the topics that have been within the last sort of 5 years that I've really focused on is one has been sex trafficking in America, which I have just finished that feature film. I did a short film that did quite well. It actually it came out right before a national issue that happened, but it was on Islamic phobia. And that was one of the things that I did at the time when we were sort of in a hysterical America dealing with Islamic phobia. And I did a short film on that, which actually came out and was very much based on a student who was being treated unfairly by faculty for being supposedly having terrorist, ideas. And when that was actually being edited, it came out in Texas that there was that boy at the time, if we remember, and he took a clock to school and everybody thought it was a bomb and da-da-da-da-da. So it's sort of foreshadowing these things that are happening. Another topic that was very similar situation, I did a short film on an actress out of Hollywood who was struggling with, and she sort of told her story as struggling as a woman, an actress in Hollywood. It was a very Me Too type of story. So I think as I hear these stories and people approach them, if they resonate with me, if I feel that it's something that needs to come out, it's definitely, that's when I'll take it on. And as you know, we're working on the civil rights story that have been for a couple of years now. And we're just seeing this become such a movement right now. And so it's the timing is just, impeccable, I guess. And something I'm very passionate about. So I think when I hear a story that resonates and it's something that I need to get out, it's a passion that's just within me. So.
Yeah. And do you find that the voice of the majority, if you will, is important to be heard and relevant in really effectuating change in the system, so to speak?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I think it brings momentum, it brings wings underneath the purpose. But I don't think it's necessarily that has been the impetus for me jumping on something. As an example, sex trafficking, that's not something that we're hearing out there necessarily. That's not the voice of the majority, but yet it's the voice of the voiceless that needed to get out there. So yes, but depending on the topic, I think I'm more inspired by whatever it is that's the story that I feel can resonate with people, that can bring change in their thinking and their biases and their prejudices. How can I bring the story so that you can see a slice of stepping in someone's shoes to start thinking about maybe challenging the way you think about things? And I think that's what sort of starts it for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Melba, on a whole opposite side of the spectrum in your corporate life,
Mhm.
when we were talking the other day, you mentioned that you are working actually on a project, the Marion Dupree Group is, a product around empathy. What is that, and why do you think that that's necessary?
What do you have to, what product on
I'm asking Melva. This is
okay. Melba. Okay, good.
Melva. It's her company. You're like,
Yeah, I
what
was
product?
like, what product? Go ahead, Melba.
It's okay. I'm okay. You can start it, Nicole.
No.
So the way I'll answer that is with the first question that you ask and the motivation. So I have a 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. I live in a predominantly white community. I'm married to a Haitian man, and my children are always the only one. I grew up in an all-Black environment, all-Black schools in Houston, Texas on the north side. I went to Howard University with Kamala Harris. But as an adult, my life has always been, I'm the only one. And throughout my career in working in market research in entertainment, I went out of my way to make sure that my staffs were diverse, to make sure that I found people that looked like me, because I was always alone in a meeting. And so I cut my hair short, and I would do certain things to remind them that I am different. And so part of that is making them a little bit uncomfortable because they would forget. My 16-year-old, when she was in third grade, told me that she was the only Black kid in the third grade. And I was sort of devastated because I thought I'd made a mistake. She swims, and she's on the diverse committee for USA Swim, and often does a lot of things in and around racism. She's my little Malcolm X whereas my other one is a little bit more W.E.B. Du Bois. So I've got two sides. And if you know your history, we've been having a lot of conversations in and around this. And as I've been working with clients, it felt like when Obama was elected, I think we thought we had arrived. Everything is good. We're good. We're good. We don't have to do anything else. And then Donald Trump ran, and racism is it's a birthmark in this country. You know, when you get outside of this country, you realize there are more people of color in the world. It's just when you're in the US, it looks very different. But also, as my daughter is beginning to learn about history and beginning to understand what happens within the space, and you have to teach them, you know, because we have to be twice as good to be considered equal, right? But when Obama got elected, it's like, oh, no, we're all equal now. No, we are not. And there's still things that happen because we are dehumanized. And that has been systemic and over a long period of time. And so she's starting to come into that. My kids are starting to notice that there are not images that look like them. I've got one that's light and one that's dark. The dark one looks like, you know, a Hershey's Kiss. And so in working with clients and what's going on right now, it feels for the first time that we're ready to do that next step after civil rights, because most young people don't understand that the video that they see on civil rights, that was not a couple of weekends. That was like a 20-year struggle, right? And we still didn't get that far. And what did they do? They killed all of our leaders. Every one of our leaders was assassinated. You know, there's that movie about Fred Hampton right now. Nobody knows about Fred Hampton. Nobody actually knows the history of the Black Panther Party. So as I begin to work with clients, and we're going through this moment right now, beginning to teach people about culture, and it came with working with a client where there was no empathy in the department. They decided to target Black women, and there are no Black women working in positions of power to understand who they were making content for. So how do I create a tool to generate empathy to help them begin to basically be immersed in the culture? They may never understand the culture of Black women, but if they can grow empathy, because you don't have to understand to have empathy, walk in another person's shoes, maybe they'll make better decisions. And so that was the start of that. And, you know, the product is being built, but it was because I have these two children that the world needs to be a little bit better by the time they're adults. And it feels like we're going backwards.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's amazing. Janetta, obviously you absolutely felt that there was a need for you to write I Just Want to Live, especially what was going on at the time with that song. But, you know, what made you have your 12-year-old at the time sing it? And what was going on in your household when you were inspired to create that?
We are in a season of just tragedy after tragedy after tragedy. You know, you can try, it's hard to even try to name them. It's just like week after week, there was something after, you know, one killing after another. And it was devastating, and it was frustrating. It was just such an array of emotions, so many questions that needed answers. And I watched that video with my son and my daughter, and to see what was happening to another Black man, and the part in the video when I witnessed him crying out for his mom. As a mom, I felt like, what would I have done? How would I have felt had that been my son crying out for me in his most hopeless and helpless state? Because I have always tried to dedicate and commit my life to my children. They know if you call me, I'm coming, you know, and I ask them when they come from school, when they come from various places, how was it? Do I need to go up there? Are you sure? Like, I'm always like let me know what's going on. You don't have to do this by yourself. You would not do it by yourself. So I've always let my kids know that mama is there. And so when he cried out for his mom and, you know, she's not able to come, I would feel devastated if my children ever needed me and I was not able to provide what they needed. And so it touched me just so deeply. I knew, God, I need help with raising my son in this world. I need a divine intervention. What we are up against is so much more wicked than what we can ever imagine, and only help from God, the wisdom of God, the faith in God is going to help us to be able to endure what we've been enduring. For me, I'm 39, for a lifetime. I was born into this type of corrupt environment. And my son is the future. So what type of world will he live in when I'm gone? Have I equipped him with enough wisdom? Have I imparted enough in him to where he can survive? And so I felt the need that I must do something. As a mom, we always feel like we got to do something, you know? And so mommy mode tapped in. I got to do something like right now.
Yeah. And so what I love is how you told me that you prepared Kedren to sing the song. I mean, you wrote it and then you gave it to him, and just share how you had him prepare for the performance that ultimately blessed millions of people worldwide.
So we are a faith family. We have devotion in our home collectively and individually. And so I told Kedren, during your devotion time, I want you to take these lyrics and I want you to pray over them and I want you to meditate on them and allow the Holy Spirit to give you what you need to be able to deliver a message. And so he did that. He went into his room and in his prayer time. And once he was done in the presence of God, he came and he said, Mom, I'm ready. I feel it. I'm ready. So definitely, we know that in our home and in our faith, you have to seek the face of God for direction and the power to be able to deliver the message where it can be impactful. And so that's what he did. And the results, I know it came from God. Only God can do what was done with that song. And so we just give God the glory.
I love it. The rest is history. And it's a perfect segue to the kind of where I want to go next. I mean, this is the Focus on Faith web series. And so, you know, the next kind of area I want to go into is kind of what touches on what you were just talking about, but it kind of flips it because you integrated your faith into the message of social justice and having a message to try to address what was going on in the world. And this sort of next segment, if you will, I'm kind of calling Where the Saints At? You know, there's this whole thing in America often where we say there needs to be separation of church and state. And, you know, although there's, you know, in so many ways, our first civil rights thoughts and fights were fought through spirituals and through gospel music. And they were backed by a soundtrack that was rooted in messages from God and for God and to God. Yet now, today, our faith-based creators showing up when it comes to social justice issues. Obviously, you and Kedren did. And the issue also becomes, you know, with it being often looked at as a conservative genre, is the industry of faith-based creators showing up for a multitude of civil rights issues, whether it's, yes, civil rights for racial equality, but then there's also gender equality. There's also issues of LGBT communities. There's issues of all kinds of other religions, like Nicole was talking about with the Muslim community. Are they showing up in all the issues? Can they? I'm going to read a quote and then I'm going to ask a question. I was watching a documentary and one recently on the Black church in America on PBS. And John Legend was on, and he said, for those of us who are more progressive, the church just doesn't connect on all the issues we care about. Ted Wynn. Your connection between your love of God and your calling to the music ministry versus your call to speak on social justice issues. Are you an anomaly, like I said when I introduced you? Or is that something you're seeing more in the genre? Why not? Speak on it.
No, I'm not really seeing a lot of it in the genre. There are a few people who speak up. There are, and I don't want to act like, I'm the only one. So there are people, a lot of us who aligned with the Black Church PAC recently during the general election and the special election in Georgia. Myself, Erica Campbell, I should not have started calling names. Other people, other artists who connected, who were outspoken, who've been vocal about voting rights and showing up to the polls and issues that concern us. I do think there's been a incredible shift away from justice issues as it relates to faith spaces. And I think that part of that has been propelled by the type of comfort that comes when we're talking about economic change and class shifts, where people feel like those issues aren't really my issues anymore because I've made it. As Melba spoke to with the election of Obama, there were so many people who felt like we were in a post-racial space, right? I was not one of those folks because I look at data and the data points were clear that in neither election did Obama receive the majority of the white vote. Now, does that mean something? To me, yes, it does. And so I think that as we kind of look at that and look at kind of the entrance of prosperity gospel and these other things that start to deal with, American capitalism on steroids, and what people began to focus on and this type of need to fit in broader spaces, i.e. connect with people who are white Christians who do other kinds of music, it kind of took our eye off the ball to the point that you made watching the PBS special and other things I've looked at. Most every, justice movement has been born out of Black church spaces. Mm-hmm. Then came Black Lives Matter, which wasn't one of the very first ones. And so that should have raised a lot of questions for us as to why are these folks talking about this and people in Black faith spaces are not talking about these things. And I think that's really a lot of the problem. And so when I've had conversations with people, there is this kind of overlap of, kind of what are issues of conservative people? Are Black people conservative? Are Black Christians concerned about the same things that white Christians are concerned about? And I think it's really interesting. It's a telltale sign to me when you look at the fact that about 80% of white people who identify themselves as Christian vote Republican, right? Mm-hmm. Flip that, and about 80% of Black folks who identify as Christian vote Democrat. So there's a clear distinction in terms of what we are concerned about and which party we feel like espouses the issues that really affect us and who has the solutions to those issues. Now, for those who are history buffs, that was different, probably in the 60s, but around that time where you had Dixiecrats and some other things, there was a kind of reversal of where the parties aligned and how people saw themselves, et cetera. And so I think that brings us to where we are now. So I think to your question, no, I don't see a lot of people, Black folks specifically in faith-based spaces, having these conversations. And I think a lot of them are conflicted. Some of them might not feel like they have the language. Some of them might feel like for business decisions, like maybe this doesn't work well for my bottom line. Some of them enjoy being invited to majority white spaces where they can perform, where they can make money, where they can do their music. And they prioritize their quote unquote ministry, above kind of everything. Like this God idea supersedes these things. And they're conflicted. I am not conflicted by these things, right? Because if you are not a person who is espousing policies that are not ones that are not overtly racist, but ones that are anti-racist, then you're just not somebody I'm rocking with. Because then you are not espousing policies that really sustain, protect, perpetuate, move toward the equity of my life. And people who look like me, and people who think like me, and people who've had these experiences historically in America. And so when we're talking about what kind of music we should be doing and what should we be talking about and what issues are we addressing, I mean, it doesn't matter if you are a person who identifies as a Black Christian or a Black Muslim or however you are. That's just, it's not a question when the police pull you over. It's not a question when it comes to equity and health care. It's not a question when it comes to you get a job or not. It's not a question when you look at the criminal justice system and a litany of other things. Like, it's about how systemic racism affects you based on your race. Fundamentally, that's the ground floor where we all, I think, should be aligned, but we're not in many instances. And so it's challenging to me. I won't say I'm disappointed in it because it's just not really been a thing in my lifetime. But I would like to see more people who do gospel music or other types of music speak to these issues and platform these issues and highlight these things, because we all have platforms. Mm-hmm. And we can discuss the things we want to discuss. And that becomes, again, tricky for some folks, because there are some gospel artists whose names I won't call, who aligned themselves and performed at like Trump's inauguration and, things like that. I mean, and I was, appalled I was offended by it for a lot of reasons. But, people make their own choices, make their decisions. But again, I think it's one thing to say that I'm a conservative person and I have certain beliefs and whatever. It's another thing to align yourself with people who are sexist, xenophobic, anti-Black, et cetera. I think it's just a very different type of, nuance and position. And so my hope is that we will see more of that. I'm committed to that. I'm very outspoken, as you know about that, to the point you made earlier. I'm working on a social justice album that is, it's a non-gospel project, because I think that we need to have really specific and direct conversations about the things that we are contending with on a daily basis. We really need to address these things. And again, to the point that Nicole made, these things are they resonate outside of our religious affiliations, right? So if you're going to be concerned about injustice, as Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, has to be all folks, whether you're LGBTQIA+, whether you are a woman. And so I'm not a woman. I don't understand in a lived experience kind of way the things that women deal with, but I did the work of sitting down and listening to women and asking them questions and saying, well, how does this make you feel? Well, what about this? And so I did a conference call, a call on a podcast with a young woman in New York. And she really broke down to me like the things that she contends with every day in New York before she leaves her house, what she wears, which route she's going to take, because she thinks about being catcalled and what kind of response she gets if she doesn't respond a certain way. I've never thought about that in my entire life.
Right.
And so I think that if you really care about human beings, if you really care about equity, if you really want to understand where people are because you care about justice, you will do the work to understand where people are so you can at least be empathetic and be anti whatever system is oppressing those people.
I love it. That was so powerful, Ted. And you said so many things that triggered more things in me, but the front lines, let's talk about that. And Breon, historically religious leaders were at the forefront, right, of our fights for justice and against inequality. Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton, to name just, this many a few. You are on the front lines in your advocacy work. You are lobbying. You are helping people get clemency. You are really there. And you too are a man of faith and have found an intersection and a way to sort of communicate and find alignment in both trains of thought. But are you seeing the same level of involvement from a leadership standpoint in terms of, today versus maybe days prior? And does it matter?
So I would say we are not seeing it at the same level. I do believe it's showing up differently for instance, I called the firm that we have, the Daniel Initiative,
Mhm.
off of the biblical story of Daniel. And I would counter that he was not necessarily overt. The way he showed up in the space was not, everybody else bow down, my God is the best, right? He let his receipts speak for him. He did the work, the passion, the commitment, the authenticity, the commitment to this. And that in and of itself made the compelling case. He didn't spend time shouting out his haters. He didn't spend time, letting everybody else understand this is what you're not going to do. And I say that in one sense, side note, I think too often, and I'm concerned when we start focusing on being anti-racist, because anti-racist is not enough. That gets us at equal, right? It's the same reason why I don't identify anymore as Protestant. We have a whole tradition where we're saying we are protest. And part of the reason we have a problem in the faith when it comes to retention is because we've been so busy articulating what we're against, and we've never taken the time to actually articulate what we're for. And so when we even talk about anti-racism, I don't need you to be anti-racist. I need you to be pro-Black. I need you to be pro-brown. I need you to be pro people with disabilities. I need you to be pro-LGBTQ. The difference there says I'm going to do whatever it takes versus I'm just going to be against something. That allows you to sit comfortably on the margins. And so the reason I bring that up, again, the fight today, the religious leaders have helped us get towards some commodity of justice historically and towards a commodity of equality. But when the name of the game is equity, that means equity is how are we making sure everyone is connected to power at the same space? That means regardless of whether we agree religiously, regardless of whether we share the same gender, regardless of whether we identify on sexual orientation wise, how are we making sure that everybody has access to that power? And to Ted's point, this is where you saw Black Lives Matter, movement for Black Lives, and a whole host of other people start to show up in a way that was different. And so I'd say you have people like Ted, you have me, the Daniel Initiative, we lead, but it's more in a covert. We're not going to slap you with Jesus tracts and shove it down your throat and be like, what is your plan for salvation today? It's going to be through the receipts, because one thing we start to realize more is people may not remember what you do for them, but they will never forget how you make them feel.
Right.
However you make them feel. And so when we make space for different people, as Melva said, when we come from an empathetic tone and make space and privilege, and this is the last thing that I'll unpack, I think we all too often focus on privilege in a disparaging way. And when we talk about privilege, we immediately think of white privilege as if that's the only privilege. I'm Black privilege, and I will say that I have privilege. All of us have privilege because privilege is access. And so I'm not suggesting that a white person should feel debilitated because they were born white and may have had some advantages. Because if they could determine that, predetermine that, they might as well be God. They are not. And so for me, what we're saying is, how are you acknowledging that you have access in some spaces that other people don't?
Right.
Own that and use that in a way to expand access to others that don't look like you, that don't share the same benefits, that don't come from the same economic background, that don't have some of these same educational privileges and benefits that some of us have. And so, this is why I think it's important that we name that the fight is equity, not equality, because we show up different, and the faith community does struggle with what it means to show up in equity, because that means you're going to have to include some people that might not agree with you and might not share the same viewpoint. But some of us are doing that work and we're moving forward. So it's not dead, but there's always work to be done.
Can I add something for that?
Yes.
The other thing I'll say, and this is the history part of it, because that's what I struggle with right now, because we don't have a tremendous amount of history. What I love about both Breon and Ted is like, you actually understand there's a strategy to this. I mean, if you go through your history and understand the civil rights movement and what different people did, which is why I made that point about our leaders are not here, there was a lot going on in order to get to that place. What's interesting to me right now is the church served for Black people a very specific thing that doesn't exist anymore. That's where I got into Girl Scouts. That was the first credit union that I was a part of. It actually serviced something in the community. And I can remember growing up, I grew up in Houston. My mother was a Delta, but they, a National Council of Negro Women, I remember meeting Dorothy I. Height. They registered people to vote. What happened on the ground, and that all came out of the church. It wasn't it happened on the ground. That ground game was really important. We saw the effect of that, which is why Georgia went blue, because of that ground game. And my hope is that, because we don't have any other, other than if you now want to go to barbershops and beauty shops, right? Because that would be the other place where anybody can come in and congregate. But we don't have those centers that can go out into the community that are not targeted, if you will. That, because once it becomes much more about peacocking and all of the other things, then we're into another space. And part of the issue from where I am is education and understanding history. Nothing that's going on now hasn't happened. And if you know what those kids went through to sit at those lunch counters and how they were prepped for that, my children are privileged. They speak multiple languages, they fly first class, and I remind them over and over again, you have to struggle. I worry that my little one, someone's going to call her something in college and she's going to call me and say, Mom, I'm Black. Why didn't you tell me? I don't think the world's going to move that much further, but I'm hoping within that generation, go back and look at the Black Panther Party was a political party. They started with feeding people. But our media, our government basically dehumanized them and talked about them as being a bunch of radicals and a bunch of anarchists. And that dehumanization, we do it to ourselves in a way that's awful. And within the church, we do that as well. It's like there should be no, you should not be excluding people. That's if you read the Bible, that's not how that works. So I'll shut up now.
No, I love it.
Can I say something right quick?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So I appreciate all that. I have my take is a little different than Breon's, whom I love and think is very smart. I am more Marcus Garvey in my approach as it relates to that. Like I understand words matter.
Did you say Marcus Garvey?
Yes.
Okay, well, you and I have to talk. That no.
Part two.
No.
You don't like Marcus?
You want to go to Booker T. Washington? We good. Marcus Garvey?
Well, let me say this.
No.
What I mean by that is not, I'm not a separatist, right? But what I do mean by the Garvey approach is one that does not look to whiteness, white people, and white systems for the things that we can have to have sustainability.
That's Booker T. Washington.
Okay, Booker T. Washington. We'll go with Booker T. Washington.
It's like think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, during the Depression.
Mm-hmm.
Black folks turned $1 in the Black community 11 times. That's why they burned it down, because they didn't need them. Right.
Yes. So to that point, and I will say Booker T. Washington for purpose of this conversation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Marcus Garvey wanted to go back to Africa. You and I don't want to go back to Africa.
No, but he also espoused a kind of Puritan idea about Black people having their own social economic system inside of a white space as well. And that's really more. Yeah, so I don't want to go back to Africa, to be very clear. But I also think that when we talk about words like pro and anti, I think that's kind of more why I am one who uses the word like anti-racist, because I'm not looking. I just want people who will work against the system that's in place and deconstruct it. And I understand the point that Breon is making, and I think it's a valid one, where the language does matter. So we're for something as opposed to against everything or always anti everything. As it relates to privilege, I am not I think that there are elements of privilege that I have like male privilege. I don't understand when people say black privilege, and maybe you can expound what that actually means in the current system in which we live in America. One of the other things is that I'm not a proponent of the ideas of privilege, because I think privilege is problematic. And I say that because I've watched episodes of like Ellen DeGeneres, right? And she will do wonderful philanthropic things for people, and it's emotional and people cry. I'm like, oh my God. But as I watch it sometimes, I'm like, you know, she wouldn't need to give the Black family $50,000 if we lived in an equitable society. And so when we talk about how people use their privilege, maybe sure, but are you using your privilege to deconstruct the system that gave you privilege? Because that's what I really want, is equity. I don't want you to use your privilege to help me. I want you to create a system where what you have is not more valuable than what I have. You're not seen as more valuable than I am. I did an interview with a gentleman in Canada, who's a Black guy who went to Morehouse, married a white woman in Canada. We had a whole thing. His video went viral. You guys may have seen it because he was called the N-word. He's making this video. We did a podcast interview, and he said that his wife was white, but she used her privilege because et cetera. And I was just like, is she trying to deconstruct the system that gave her privilege, or is she just using it? Like, it's just a weird kind of way to think about it to me. He got a lot of static from Black Lives Matter in Canada because he came up with a different hashtag, make it awkward. And they felt like, these are their words, not mine, he created that as something different when there was something that already existed, a construct that's focused on the issues of race. And so because he didn't want to align with that, then he came up with something else, and they found that, you know, problematic. So I do think that when we're talking about issues of privilege, like, do I and men live in male privilege? Yes. Do I want to use that to help women? No. I want to work to get rid of misogyny. I want to work to get rid of sexism. I want to work to get rid of any system that privileges me as a man, because women are not lesser or weaker or any of those other things. They are equal human beings who should be valued the same, paid the same, respected the same, and appreciated the same. So I don't want to use my privilege, right, in that way. So I'm not one who, you know, espouses that idea. My 2 cents.
So what I love about all of you is the brilliance and the perspective and the conversation. I started the panel by saying that art helps us have the hard conversations. I feel like sometimes when we want to go get in a room, I want to be in the room with all of you right now. And I just want to sit back and I want to take my water bottle and I want to do this for hours. However, the reality is, right, this is a society that likes to keep stuff a little lighter. Sometimes we don't always want to get into the hard conversations, or it starts to feel uncomfortable. Malva, you had said, you know, there's a very specific way that you enter the corporate world. I mean, you have headed as a top executive in media companies, you know, you have headed them and you have held very important positions, yet you've done things, positioned yourself. You even said with your look that you've done things to just sort of go, yeah, don't get it twisted. This is who I am. I'm here, and you will see me. But because everybody doesn't want to have the conversation, I personally appreciate and I'm grateful for the fact that every single one of you also can sit in a debate or sit in a place of advocacy in a conversation, but you've also found a way to express your positions and have the conversation through art, which sometimes will have a broader audience. It might spark a different train of thought in people, to not just have the conversation for conversation's sake, but to actually have it sit and resonate. And so it's like, I don't even know where I want to start with this, but I just kind of want to talk about how you guys are integrating the very social issues, your personal perspectives on right and wrong, quite frankly. I mean, we can call them movements and social justice and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, we're having conversations about what's right and wrong, at least through our different lenses. How are we integrating these different issues into our entertainment content? And most importantly, because each of you are in the content that you are a part of creating, a part of promoting, a part of presenting to the world. I saw a piece that recently, and I'm late because this piece actually came out a couple years ago, but it's highlighted again in a recent documentary that Yamaha Entertainment Group did. And it's called The 7 Last Words of the Unarmed. It is a piece, a choral arrangement piece that was written by a composer named Joel Thompson, who I was searching for for today. It is one of the most prolific works of music, of art that I think I may have seen in recent history. And it is a piece that integrates the words, the last words of 7 Black men who were killed by the police. I wanted to present that piece through this medium, but it's not the most effective medium. And so, but we are presenting the 7 last words of the Unarmed through our YouTube channel. We have put the link for our participants into the chat. And please, please, please view the 7 last words of the Unarmed. Another is a piece that I think, Tiago, you might have been a part of, but I was a part of licensing one of the Clark sisters' song, Is My Living in Vain, for a Black Voters Matter promo piece that was done. And we're also going to have that link available. And it's, both are examples, prime examples of how we can use, in these cases, music, but also visual artistry, because that promo piece is absolutely, it's beautiful, to get our message across. So, like I said, I almost hardly don't even know where to begin. I'm gonna start with you, Tiago. It's been a minute.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, so, okay, so to get the message across, first of all, I'll start off by saying, like, I just got into the activist realm from the Black Voters Matter campaign that I'm the DP on. And that honestly, like, really, really taught me, like, the history.
Uh-oh, we're losing your connectivity as you're on the road again.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're frozen a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So, you know, as I've been into the activist realm for like a year now, and I only say that because I'm new to it, but I use technology and film from the 2D to the 360 immersive perspective as a way, you know, for somebody who never has been to a protest like myself, I pretty much, you know, set that standard for when people want to go to a protest or see what it's like, or even film a protest. You know, this is how we can tell the story and to tell our history, you know, and don't let the media manipulate you, pretty much. So, yeah, that's really, you know, that's really how I go about it. And, you know, just teaching people and educating people about what happens when people like us, you know, get into these spaces and we use our voices in whatever medium to, you know, articulate what we go through, what we go through. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that, you know, and even for the people that are younger, you know, younger than me, you know, that are pushing it, you know, that's all we can do is use our God-given talent, you know, to project, you know, what it is that we're trying to relay, which is, you know, injustice everywhere, injustice in the communities that we live in, you know, police brutality, all of that. Like, that's why we're here, to, you know, better us and, you know, listen from the people from the past generations that didn't have the access that we do. You know, I'm able to put everybody in a protest. I'm able to put everybody at the front line and really show them right then and there, like, this is what we're going through. So that's what I try to push, and that's what I really want people to understand. And if y'all got any questions on how to, you know, put it in your lane, you know, you know, we know it up over there. Well, but yeah, it's definitely something that can be done, and I'm gonna keep pushing it as much as I can with the knowledge that I have.
Well, and I'll say this, we're also going to make sure that we feature your piece, Tiago, that was done with the Facebook Oculus platform. There's a promo video for that entire In Protest series that we are sharing the link and that we're going to also show. Because what you did by being present on the front lines in Atlanta during the protests and shooting in that 3D, shooting it in 3D, and then them picking it up and kind of, adding it to the programming. It's unbelievable. It makes me want to get the glasses because just even though I can't get the full experience without having the glasses and such to watch it, you still get the sense where you're literally able to stand. Where you were standing was feet. Were you feet from the?
I was right in front of them. I was literally like right in front of them.
Wow.
Right in front. Yes. Yeah, I was right in front. Like they could have pulled me.
Well, we're glad they didn't, so you can continue to create more content. Nicole, we kind of previewed them a little bit, but you've got some pretty exciting things in the works. How do you think that some of the projects you're working on now are going to sort of be a louder voice with a broader audience for the issues that you look to?
Yeah. First, I just have to say I'm just so inspired by so much of this Zoom call. It's just giving me so many ideas. But on the civil rights, I know it's a great group. The civil rights project that we're working on has a real coordination of gospel music to tell the story, as you know, Heather. And I'm just thinking about all the things you're talking about, bringing faith into it. And I think that when I think about, why are we bringing in this gospel music? When we look at the authenticity, the truth of that time and how important gospel music was to tell the story, to bring together people, to give people a strength to get through the horrendous times that they were going through, a day-to-day, a light at the end of the tunnel, if it wasn't even in this life, but in the next life. It's such a big part of the strength that it brought. And as I was looking at this script and I was literally playing the freedom songs, the gospel songs, we shall overcome and the Lord will see us through and all of these kinds of things, the power of that to tell the story and to mix that with film, I think just leaves the viewer. Music has this way of just sitting and lingering, and you remember the words, and then the words bring back the cinematic effects of it, and it just helps to sort of show the story. And I'm excited about that. So I'm excited to bringing in the gospel aspect of it, the strength of it. But I do think of how do we bring it into today? How do we take this story and how does it resonate to today? And the fact that we can't throw faith out. We still need faith. We still need to have that. Our children need faith. And Keegan's mom, Janetta, talks about we need to instill that faith for our kids to see through their challenges that we can't even predict, to take it to the next level. So we can't just sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to we have to adapt to this generation and keep and bring it in its forms that I think need to be told. And that's why I'm finding these conversations, so inspiring to kind of figure out how to tell that story in this generation.
Well, what I love about you and what I've loved about working with you is that you have taken stories that, maybe just hadn't even really been explored, or topics that maybe people hadn't focused on. And especially like with Ring of Silence, blew it wide open. It became a part of the conversation during political campaigns. And you were literally focusing on something that it started as a PSA. if you don't mind, just give me a little bit about Ring of Silence and how that, really, because I think it's a classic example of how art is able to broaden a conversation and have a deep impact in the issues that we address.
I think that comes from hearing and listening to real people tell real stories and telling those stories with the authenticity that needs to be told, not, making it a political sensationalism that maybe might get behind a movement or might attach to a movement. It's telling the truth of the stories, the way that they're being told. And I take that as one of my missions. I don't want to botch somebody's story to make it something that is politically correct at the time. I want to tell it in its truthfulness. And that's what it was for me. Once I heard the stories of these victims, I needed it to come out and from their perspective. I needed it to be their truth. I needed it to be their voice. And I take it very seriously on intermixing mediums to make that come in a way that people can, again, resonate with. And it can change their thinking. I mean, really, I think that's the mission of everything. I think it's listening to people.
Yeah, thank you. I also feel like there's so many different ways that all of you guys are looking at not only what you're working on now or what you've worked in the past, but even looking forward. Janetta, there are so many possibilities for you. I mean, I know that you are so humble and you're like, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I care about my children, I do my job, I work with my church, and you've been sort of in the background, but in working with you, the force of just who you are, what you stand for, what you represent, and then your level of creativity is absolutely ridiculous. From being able to be a songwriter, but also an author, and also, there's so many ways that people are now looking to see how will you use your voice. We know how Kedren's going to use his, and how you use yours through him. But how do you see there being some ways that you'll be continuing to use your voice going forward?
Yes, I do believe that art provides a voice for the heart. And I would continue to write. It's something about when you take your feelings to a pen and you put it on words, it's kind of like, we know the Bible, you write the vision and you make it plain, so that the hearer, can run with it. So writing, man, is so important because we know that words are so important, what we speak. I mean, the earth was spoken, the world was spoken into existence. So we know the power, the creativity that words in itself can create. And so literacy definitely is something that I want to embark upon. Can't stop writing, because when you're writing, you're telling a story. And truth, I look at that, truth is realness. And realness cannot be denied. You can't deny real when you see it, whether you like it or not. Like that was real. That was true. And so I will continue writing. I will continue in various forms, book form, songwriting, journaling. Just always being able to express myself. And writing is a form of release. I can get it out. The arts provide various other forms, musically, instrumentally, people using their voices. So I love that we do have the venue and the lanes, the opportunities that art present for us to be able to speak a language that can reach the universe. I'm so honored to see how I just want to live, as we know that racism is not just in America, but how it was able to reach across the globe. So the arts do give us an avenue to reach many places that our feet may never go. And when you are operating in truth, it doesn't even matter your age, because I think about it at the time, Kedren was 12. And this is a Zoom faith. So we know the ministry of Jesus, when he started 12 years old. So just the power that we have when we operate in honesty. Because when you are writing, you have to be honest. And it's honesty that is gonna move on the hearts of people. I heard so many people saying the lyrics of the song, like, wow, that was what I was feeling. You said exactly, what I was feeling. So it's something about being truthful when we do express ourselves, and people gravitate to truth. It's like when stuff is kind of false and, like that's the kind of stuff that the shaky things that, kind of put light bulbs in people's head. But definitely when you are speaking truth, it gives hope. And so I look forward to what God is going to do. The doors is he's going to open for me to be able to hear from him, and then to be able to put it on paper in some type of form that it can go into the ears, into the hearts and the minds of those that are able to receive it.
Well, and I even love the way that you're using it even in fashion, because quite frankly, I know that you are, at just looking at you, honey, a diva of fashion. But even in the taglines, yes, I Just Want to Live was a lyric in the song, but even during the electoral cycle, you had the vote shirt and Voice Our Tears Electronically, which is such a beautiful sentiment. It's succinct. It spreads a word, and through fashion. Will you just make sure you let everyone know what the website is for your line?
So you can go to shopkedrenbryant.com. And I'm just so honored to be able to work alongside of my son and to be able to be a part of what, God is doing in his career. As a mother, I'm just, again, I'm very hands-on with my children, and I'm just honored that the label is allowing me to be there and support and to stand with and help guide, my son, because we know this is a journey. So many things can come up, and I refuse to let any organization, anything take my place. Right. I'm mom, and I'm gonna be mom, and I'm so honored again that I'm able to still be mom in his life.
I love that too. And the last thing I want to say on this subject of just the creativity and the art, even through you with your support and through Kedren, and the label, though he signed to Warner Records, he was a part of an amazing project that was actually a Disney project in conjunction with their Undefeated program. And he got to sing, they were reimagining songs from sort of the civil rights era and from iconic artists. And he was able to do a remake of Mercy, Mercy Me, which was amazing. And when you guys were shooting the video, it was just so wonderful because you guys, I think that was in LA, and I was on the Zoom with all of the Czech Disney people, and it was funny. He's on set and he's performing the song, and then next thing, you and your husband and your daughter, everyone was kind of like, "Hey, we're here." So it's a beautiful thing, and he's getting such a broad stage. The other thing I loved about that project was that they also took artists and used all of the cover art for each of those singles was done by a Black artist, which brings me to Melba on a nice little transition, because again, there's so many ways that through our art, we can, yes, entertain, yes, we can inspire, but we can also resonate with all types of connoisseurs of art. And your gallery, Band of Vices, which I'm obsessed. It's considered one of the most significant Black-owned galleries in the country. You were just recently featured in the news as being kind of one of the top 10 galleries with a virtual exhibit to watch for. But the current exhibition that you have is called In the Midst of It All. Can you just talk a little bit about the gallery and, the current exhibition, what it's about and what you guys represent?
Absolutely. So Band of Vices has been around. It was established in 2015 by our founder, and I can't believe I'm about to basically blank on his name. Cannot believe this. So Terrell is our founder, who's also an actor, has been my art curator for many, many, many years. He started in his home. He had his first gallery, which was on Pico. He closed that a few years ago. So it was called Tag. And I said, if you ever do this again, please let me know. We'll do it together. So we're in West Adams in Los Angeles, in a nice space. And what we decided to do is to focus on emerging artists and mid-career artists, specifically people of color. We've shown more Black women than any gallery in LA. And what Terrell and Melvin, so Terrell Tilford and Melvin Marshall are what we like to call the Eye. There are 4 of us that are partners in the gallery. Terrell and Melvin are really good at identifying artists early in their career that have something to say. And when you think about art, and I'll just show you this piece, which is, which I happen to have, I don't know, can you see it? Which is Charlie Palmer, I'm a Man, so that's the garbage strike, that have something to say and can say it, but need a little bit of help in saying it in a way that makes you feel something. And when you watch the virtual shows, you watch the digital shows, Terrell is really good about taking you into a piece of art and helping you understand what is it that attracted him, the technique that the artist is using. Many of them are self-taught, and what's going on. When everything started in the pandemic, and we went on lockdown last March, we're usually many months ahead with our shows planned. So our first really show planned happened towards the end of last year, called Kings, and we featured 4 Black male artists, and their work was specifically as a response to Black Lives Matter. And so at that point, the work started to shift. The 3 women that are in the gallery now, so we've got Rewa, we've got Tiffany Dulon, and we've got Kay Freeman, are all contemporary artists from all over the world, actually. Kay is from LA, one is from Africa, and one is from Europe. And they each, one is self-taught, they each go into this space of the human condition, not necessarily suffering, but their focus is on women. And if you go onto Instagram and go into the IG of In the Midst of It All, that particular IG, you can see these works. I can't even, these works are incredible. The show, I don't know if there's anything left in the show to buy, but
I was going to ask you that. Don't say that.
I don't know if there's anything left in the show to buy, but we can always find something with the artist. But when he takes you through that show and you begin to see it, because it's like you're in the gallery, you begin to see and begin to understand, the works are pretty incredible. I was in the 3rd grade when I discovered Georgia O'Keeffe and started reading about her and this life and everything going on, and thought, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to have an art gallery, not to make money, but because I'm so in awe of what artists do. But Black artists, and part of the thing that we've tried to figure out, Kerry James Marshall sold a piece for $20 million. I think Puff P. Diddy bought it. He did not participate in that. So he probably sold that piece to the gallery. I can guess which gallery it was, for at the most, maybe 50K. They said on it, they took it to auction. The gallery made the money because the piece was sold for $20 million. And so very rarely do Black artists participate. It's great to see that Kerry James Marshall piece to go for that, and many artists go for that, but it's really hard to get to that space. And the way galleries work and how they treat artists, the artists rarely, many artists die poor, or they die, they can cover their bills, but their work may achieve great heights, Charlie Palmer, his one of his pieces on Frederick Douglass went onto the cover of the Time magazine. Beautiful piece. He's an amazing artist. Right now, we believe it's important to support living artists and artists of color right now when they actually can feel it and see it. And part of our thesis in the gallery is to make sure that you understand that this is not out of reach. You know, we were talking about privilege earlier. Heather and I had a long conversation about how you buy art. And most of the things that I have, you know, I've got this bronze sitting here. I don't know if you can see her. Most of the things that I've bought, you know, I've paid for over time, but it's accessible. It's not just for, and so we're in West Adams because we're, I think, the only Black-owned business on that block, but we're in a part of LA where it's filled with Black and brown people, and we want them to come into this space and see this work and be inspired to participate in this work. But we also want to do what we can to elevate artists, because art's a commodity. And as I said, Kerry James Marshall, yes, you'll get to that place in terms of your art selling that well, but to be able to participate in that upside is what we're trying to sort of do in trying to blow up the model of the way you think about art. So
yeah, and I love it. And the business model that you are working to develop, that you and I have also talked about, it's just, it's incredible. It's what, you know, we fight for in the business side of the music industry, of the film industry, of, you know, so many areas of, you know, artistic expression and advocating for artists in all medium, is how do they get to benefit from the work that they do, in addition to the infrastructure around them. Bryant, your voice is in so many platforms. You are, you know, I've talked already about all of the different ways that you express sort of your fundamental principles, your understanding of right and wrong, and your quest for equity. You use your voice so many ways. What do you think, though, what medium do you think has the most impact for your message?
So, and you know, I was thinking about this when I first saw you putting this question together to me, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna go right back to the scripture. When I think about in the Bible, when they talk about conversation, and let your conversation, you know, be clean. They're not talking about just what you say. They're talking about, is what you say tied up with how you're living, tied up with, so you should be the same everywhere you are. And so for me, you know, that's why even when I built the Daniel Initiative, I had come from Capitol Hill, being the senior policy advisor, come from an Obama alumni, right? And being able to, I had to come to this, that I'm a songwriter, I'm an author, all of these are part of my conversation in these different mediums. And so I had to realize I am the brand. Like I'm the voice, and how I use my voice and how I show up matters. What I associate my name with matters. The way I treat people even matters, because all of that is paramount to the work. And so, you know, for me, I find it hard to necessarily pick like social media, or, you know, maybe I'll use in the policy space, because for me to again, coin to Janetta, all throughout this coin, I want to live, and the way I live is my brand, and that's my voice, the way that I communicate, right? And so much so that we were privileged, absolutely, to participate and help spearhead congressional and influencer engagement for the March on Washington with Reverend Sharpton and Martin Luther King III in August. That had 97,000 people out there. But part of our credibility, even with the influencers who we represent, you know, because we help people, whether they're an organization, whether they're, especially if they're influencers, we help them understand that everybody has social and political capital. And how are they using that at varying levels? How are they using that for their maximum? And so we treat our clients just like I just said with myself. They are the brand. Like, what is the essence of you? And how do we amplify that? And so, you know, me being able to come to peace in terms of here's the different spaces that I was called to. And maybe I wasn't called to lead predominantly in each of these things, but some of those spaces were so I could identify. Because as a songwriter, I'm still in my journey as a songwriter, and I've been blessed to have a few placements. But the reality is, it was that experience and music business that helped me when I was lobbying for the Songwriters Equity Act, which turned into the Music Modernization Act. Right? I was able then to use being an activist and say, here's how we need to make space. And to Ted's point, and I'm chewing on what you said. I really do. I appreciate Ted. Because for me, with privilege, I think we're at the same space, because for me, I believe that privilege is not just opening that door, but one of the things we make sure we do at the Daniel Initiative is we center voices of the people that are directly impacted. And I say this often, I'm not in here to fight white supremacy, which is what we need to do to become someone's Black Jesus, right? Mm-hmm. And so the important thing is,
Janetta, write that down.
Right. When we go in these spaces, like, I have privilege to me as access. These members of Congress are going to listen to me before, unfortunately, they listen to a vast majority of people, because I had the time. So for me, I show up in that space, but I bring somebody else that's directly impacted. They sit in the seat. I'm just the heavy in the back. Because it's about making sure that you're able to articulate for yourself, to navigate the spaces for yourself, that this is what I want. And I just sit back, like, when they try to play these games and say, oh, it's not possible. Now, Senator, you and I both know that in 1997, this is what the precedence was. And once we level set that, I sit my Black behind back quietly and allow the person to move forward. And to me, that's what, when I say like privilege, it is that important component. And I take your point, Ted, is making sure we center the voices, the expertise, the experiences of the directly impacted, and that we serve as true support systems. And that's all the Daniel Initiative is at the end of the day. We're a support system for people to engage in the political and social impact spaces.
I love it. And you segued to Ted, and I know we're getting close to our wrap time, but I think that, you know, Ted, you are the quintessential example of what this panel was all about, both from a thought leader perspective and an advocate perspective, someone who has fought for rights of artists, rights of humans, education of humans, education of artists on the business side, yet having a voice of an angel and a pen of a prophet. And I just think that I want to kind of end this sort of conversation about how you are moving forward in the integration of using your gifts, using your art, using your talent to also effectuate change and educate people on messages that are important. So I would love, even though you wouldn't let me show your video, I would love, I'm so annoyed. I would absolutely, you have no, it is so, you guys, look, it's amazing. Like, I can't, I do this, you know, yes, I'm an entertainment lawyer, and I see a lot, and all my clients are amazing. Everybody's great. Love you all. Every now and then there's like something that just hits you, and he's got a video. I'm not going to say a thing about it more than it is unbelievably impactful and beautiful. And you sang it. But again, so as I was saying, I would love for you to just at least talk about the project, because I also think it too represents exactly what called me to want to do a panel and a discussion about social justice in the arts.
Thank you. This project is so important to me. Not that all my stuff hasn't been, because I think the purpose is different for me. The reason I'm doing a social justice album is really to hopefully facilitate conversation around these issues. I mean, I could just keep doing what I've been doing, and that's cool, and it can be make money off of it and have a living. But I want this to really facilitate conversations around these things. So I will talk about it a little bit. Heather's talking about I redid Marvin Gaye's Inner City Blues. This is the 50-year anniversary of the song, and what's really amazing, and maybe not in a good way, is that all the lyrics are still appropriate 50 years later. And that's the thing that really like blew me away, that we are still contending with the same things. In the visual, we did kind of throw back a little bit to that era, the Black Panther Party and et cetera. And I want to touch a little bit on something that Melva highlighted earlier. I don't know if you was joking, but I do want to talk to you for real, because I love your energy and just.
Oh, you all will be. I knew what this was going to do. This is soul reciprocity for a reason.
But what I will say is, I was talking to a friend of mine who's incredibly educated and one of the smartest people I know. I mean, he had 3 degrees by the time he was 26. He's really a brilliant mind. But he was like, I saw Judas and the Black Messiah, and I was kind of like, okay, we know this. And I was like, no, you know this. So many people don't know Fred Hampton, don't know the story, have a very warped view of what the Black Panther Party was, what their intentions were. And part of the reason that he was assassinated was so that people wouldn't know about him, and so that the movement wouldn't be able to move forward. And so I think it is important that we tell these stories. It's important that we give context to this. It's important that we humanize folks like Fred Hampton, who wasn't just an activist, he was a son, he was a father, he was a partner. I mean, he was a young man who had so much promise and potential, and even in his short life, still did so much in the community and for people. So one of the other things I did a record, Heather, get me in trouble, is I did a record with PJ Morton, a song called I Pledge. And the song is effectively asking men to take a pledge, not to be misogynist. I have never heard a song asking about it. I've never really heard a song that deals with it in the way that we did. And so to give a little bit, the hook says, I take this pledge, I do agree, not to be party to misogyny. So I will stand with each girl and woman in her agency and work for a world where she is equal to me. And I think that when we talk about the power of art and pulling people into these conversations and doing things that are, in my mind, meaningful to move us all forward, we have to be intentional about learning and listening and understanding. And I do think that, when I was writing the record, I was very intentional about saying, standing with women, because I don't think women need us to speak for them, right? Mm-hmm. They're capable of articulating their own positions and stances. But partnering is a very different type of thing. And I think that, again, that's one of the things I wanted to do. And so we have a visual for that. And we have other things that we're asking men to commit to, and to be really intentional about what they say and not participating in certain things. This is just so much normalization of misogyny. It's like you turn on the radio, you turn on the TV, you turn on anything. And it's just like, I'm making some trouble for this, but it's fine. I was really inspired to change this song because I was watching the verses that DMX and Snoop Dogg did, a little bit of it. And hearing some of the language, I had such a visceral reaction. And I was just nobody finds this problematic. This is awful. Some of the things that are being said about women, it's just like, and also, I mean, to be in full transparency, I was, raised by my mother, grandmother, great grandmother. I have 4 sisters. I have 4 aunts. So Black women were always around me, a part of my upbringing and teaching me my value systems, et cetera. And I just think that it's so important for us to have certain conversations. And I also think it's important for men to be intentional about saying things as well. So that's part of the record. I have a really provocative song on the album called What Kind of White Man Are You? Yeah. And it is not accusatory. It is really a question, And the first verse says, are you the kind who read the Bible to his slaves? Or are you the kind who fought for justice to the grave? Are you the kind who speaks up against police violence? Or are you the kind who's complicit in your silence? What kind of white man are you? I've had some people say, oh, that's, too much. But I said, well, look at what happened at the Capitol. Look at what's happening in the lives of everyday people. What's too much? When people's kids are being murdered or, not treated properly, when Black women are 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, what's too much? We're talking about the lived reality of people in a very real way every single day of our lives. I think that we have to have really honest and blunt and intentional and focused conversations to really address these things and find solution-oriented, ways to respond to them. So this is a project I'm very excited about. I mean, some people will be triggered by some things, I'm sure, but I'm okay with that. As long as we're able to, again, have substantive dialogue and conversations around these things. I know there will be people who would take issue with, the song I wrote called Slave Patrol. I know there will be. But it's honest, and I try to do my research. And so I'm having conversations that, we have to give proper historical context to policing in America. It didn't just get like this, right? It was born out of the slave patrol. This is how we got here. Someone said about racism in America, I think Melba may have said it was part of it. I always say that racism is a part of America's DNA. It's in the foundational element. Yeah, exactly. When you talk about, the massacre of millions of indigenous people and the kidnapping of millions of Africans and we can't just erase that and say oh, we have the greatest country in the world. We have to look at how we got here and why these inequities are built into the systems that still persist today. And why you have to be so exceptional as a person of color to get to, whatever space.
Right.
Average. I mean, you really think about this, and I'm done after this. You look at the qualifications, the articulation, the everything of Barack Obama, right? Who I felt like was a great president. Brianna, we'll talk offline. I had some issues with some other stuff with Obama, but his qualifications was not one of those things.
Oh, right? Me too. We will have a good chat. We might be on the same time.
but if you compare him as a qualified, intelligent person for the job to Donald Trump, I mean, Donald Trump is a personification of white mediocrity. He really is. He's really like a frat boy, right? Who was privileged through race and gender and a whole bunch of other things to get to there's absolutely unequivocally no way a Black person could have the same everything as Trump and ever be president. Ever. It would never happen. So I think that we have to be honest about where we are, how we got here, and how we want to move forward, and understand that equity and these things that we are talking about are in no way trying to move other people past other folks. It's trying to give us all, a fair chance to do the things that we do, do the things that we love. And the thing that I wish folks would understand, specifically like white supremacists, is that America would be a better space if we all had equity. America would be a better space if we were all able to, move away from these ideas that marginalize people. It would be a more productive space. It'd be a safer space. You're talking about the envy of the world. With all the diversity of creativity, from what Nicole does, to what Melva does, to what Breon does, to what Janetta does, to what James does, to what Heather does, what we all do would be great if people were allowed to operate as themselves in their full authenticity without fear of judgment or reprisal or, being berated. It would just be much more of an amazing space if we could ever get there. So I want to try to have some of those conversations with this project and hopefully inspire some people.
I am
so excited. I am
excited.
We are approaching the conclusion of this unbelievably exciting, thought-provoking, important conversation. You guys, as I said before, all represent such diverse areas of not only perspective and thought, but also of the business, this business of entertainment that we all are a part of in one way or another. And I think one of the most important takeaways for me, especially from today, is the art of conversation and the impact of having conversation through different mediums. As a woman who is half Irish, Norwegian, Polish, and half Black, I have heard, seen, watched, and being from Minneapolis, being raised 3 blocks from where George Floyd was murdered, and that convenience store having been somewhere I frequented as a child. But the lessons that I've learned through my life about movements and social justice and issues of right and wrong have been provided to me from a very wide array of viewpoints and experiences and environments. And there's one other form I just want, whoever is participating with us today in this conversation to know that there's so many ways that your voice can be heard. I can't sing, can't dance, I can't draw. I don't have a 3D camera or the glasses, like none of it. However, I think that there's ways that we can all have our voice be heard. The Soul Reciprocity Network is committed to edutainment. And yes, some of these panel discussions and other content that we create will be lighthearted and fun, but some of it's going to be really rooted in things like this, deeper messages. What are we really talking about? What's it all for? How do we bring together such a wide range of people and thought leaders and creators like today? And there was something I saw this week I'm gonna sort of end with directing our participants to. And it was a story about a mother, it's a white woman who has a biracial child and who for Black History Month, in order for her child to learn who important figures were in Black history, has actually on her page had her daughter dress up each day as a historic Black figure. And they took the picture. It's a side by side of this beautiful baby and whomever that figure was, and then a narrative about who the person was, why they were important to history, and so forth. The mother's name is Taylor Trotter, and the IG handle is Tay, Tay _TROT. It is a beautiful little story of Black history, quite frankly, and they are counting down each day of the month and having her daughter promote someone. But even a mother who's not a singer or a dancer or have a big record out is able to support the education of her child, try to effectuate change through action, which I also heard all of you saying. It's through our actions and how we live our lives that we can have the most impact. And it's through photography and all of these other things. But I just want to thank all of you. I know that I don't know that we had a lot of chatter in the chat room. I'm sure everyone was just as mesmerized by the conversation as myself, but I want to thank every single one of you for participating today. And thank you so much for your time, not only with me today, but also the time and energy and heart you put into the work that you do. You are all creating legacy that is so important and will be here for years to come. With that, if any of one wanted to just say one final word in the last 2 minutes, and then we will bid adieu for this episode.
I'll say one thing. Thank you for having me on the panel, and it was great hearing you guys. And I just wanted to say that whatever art that we do put out in the world, just be very intentional and purposeful. So yeah, just be intentional and just know that it makes a difference, no matter if it gets 1 view or 1 million. That's it. Thank you.
And I'll just say again, Heather, thank you for putting this together and for having me. And I think the brilliance of this is that we come from different spaces. And I think that that's the reality of where we are. We're in a get in where you fit in movement, where everybody has different tools. And so I can't underscore enough what you said, that no matter what your gift is, the tools in your toolbox, it's welcome in this movement. It's needed, it's necessary. And some of us are trying to make space for all of that, because this is how we show up in a fuller and broader picture. So thank you, Heather, for putting this together.
Exactly. Okay. Again, I'm thankful as well to be a part of this panel, and all of the artists in our various forms that are on here. I think it's also, just mindful that we be mindful to follow up and to follow through, with the things that we do.
I love it. And with that said, the episode 3 is coming to a close of movements, movies, music, and more. Next month is Women's Month, Women's History Month. And our panel next month is going to be called Who Runs the World? Girls. And so we will, of course, have another amazing panel of women from all aspects of the entertainment industry who will share their experiences, their impact, their messaging. And we're looking to even possibly launch 2 new programs that I will wait and announce later, and be like Ted, and wait and announce later that will feature some pretty incredible women in the industry. Thank you all. Thank you for your time. God bless you all. And until we meet again.